Hi, and welcome back to the next episode of Decoding Decarbonization. I'm your host, Stacey Mailer, and in this episode, we're talking buildings and what to do when you have lots of them, or maybe just one. Many companies, including Siemens, have building operations as a significant part of the emissions profile. Not to mention, there are regulations in place or on the horizon specifically targeting building emissions footprint. Thankfully, there are also a lot of options for understanding building impact and for making buildings more efficient and less harmful to the environment. So today's Decoding Decarbonization podcast will review effective approaches for overcoming building decarbonization challenges and best practices for minimizing carbon emissions. And so today I have with me Stephanie Dorsey, who's head of Siemens Real Estate in the US. Thank you, Stephanie, for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Absolutely. I know you're doing a lot of really exciting things with a pretty extensive footprint. So starting off, when we think about carbon neutral buildings, net zero buildings, what do you see as the principal differences between a traditional building and one that is carbon neutral or net zero?
Sure. Well, again, thanks so much for having me. At Siemens Real Estate, we are really deep into sustainability topics. So I would consider us a leader in this space. So I'm looking forward to sharing some of these initiatives that we're progressing. And so to the question of what's really the difference between traditional building and one that's carbon neutral, the difference is kind of drastic, right? Because it's all about the design, the construction, the operation, and then overall environmental impact. So I'll go through maybe a couple examples of that. If we look at energy consumption and efficiency, in a traditional building, it typically relies on conventional energy sources, so fossil fuels, natural gas. And they're often less efficient with insulation, heating, cooling, lighting systems. And most likely, they're not incorporating energy saving technologies or practices. But then on the other hand, carbon neutral buildings, they are utilizing energy efficient systems and materials to reduce energy consumption. So they're looking at utilizing renewable energy sources like solar, wind, geothermal, right, to meet the energy needs. And they incorporate things like advanced insulation or high performance windows and LED lighting and HVAC systems that are electric and not gas. I'd also point out maybe another example would be material selection and construction practices. In a traditional building, it's using conventional construction, and that tends to have a high embodied carbon due to the manufacturing and transportation processes. But if we look at carbon neutral buildings, they tend to use materials with low embodied carbon, such as recycled or locally sourced or sustainably harvested materials. And for example, at Siemens, we're really starting to get more into this circularity in construction opportunity where we're using concrete from buildings to actually start for parking lot expansions. And we're always looking at ways to upcycle our furniture wherever possible when we have different relocations and fit outs. And maybe one last example that I would highlight is water and waste management. So a traditional building's probably not prioritizing water conservation and waste reduction, most likely using conventional plumbing systems and waste management practices. And for carbon neutral buildings, they're integrating water-saving fixtures such as low-flow toilets or rainwater harvesting like we're doing at our headquarters in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and also gray water recycling. And at Siemens, we're also focused on a zero waste to landfill program. So I would say that, it's not just about the operations, it's not just about the design or about the construction, it's all of kind of that asset life cycle that needs to be reviewed when you're looking at a traditional building versus carbon neutral.
Well, I introed you by saying we were doing a lot, and you absolutely did not disappoint. So thank you for all of that. And so maybe, pivoting on that sustainability and everything that you're doing, how is that related to the resilience of the building, the cost of the building? So are there trade-offs? Do these things, do they help each other out, or how are you managing that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. For us, we have really prioritized first the decarbonization side of that topic. Next to come really is kind of the resiliency component. But I would say both of these topics are related, right? They both aim to create sustainable and future-proof structures. Decarb reduces greenhouse gas emissions primarily through energy efficiency and renewable energy to mitigate climate change impacts. If we then think about resilience, it really ensures that the buildings can withstand and recover from climate-related events. But it's funny because the more I think about resilience, everyone thinks about, can the building withstand a hurricane or a tornado or earthquakes? But what we're also starting to see is that it's a broader definition of that. Can a building withstand future technological changes? Meaning not only natural climate related disasters, but also man made disasters like cyber attack. So, this is really, I think, going to be, how do you balance decarb with resiliency so that they're not at odds with each other, but they're really kind of coexisting in a way that is enhancing a building's sustainability, durability, and then this ability to adapt to these changing market conditions that we're continuing to see.
That's a great perspective. I think one of the interesting things about climate, when I talk about climate sustainability, it's about, you need to address the climate impact or the carbon emissions impact of the building itself, but then there's also this piece of climate related risk. And now you've just added another dimension, which is overall resilience risk from technology.
Yeah.
And so maybe thinking about that technology piece, because it's a double-edged sword. You need some of that technology in order to really get the most benefit and really enable some of these solutions. So in office building environments, what types of technology do you see that need to be in place to allow gathering, centralization of emissions data or other sustainability related data and the analysis of that data to make smarter decisions?
Sure. I would say this is an area that for Siemens Real Estate, we have doubled down on. And if you know me, you will know that one of my favorite acronyms is KYS, know your stuff. And what I mean by that is, you got to know your data. So this has been a big focus of, if you don't know where you are and you don't know where you want to go, how do you build the roadmap to get there? So for us, the key was really to begin gathering the emissions data to understand energy consumption at the building level. And so what we did within Siemens Real Estate globally is we initiated a monitoring program to record energy data across 85 million square feet of space in our portfolio, the US being the second largest country in terms of square footage after Germany. And this space data from our space management tool was combined with real-time energy data to be able to see at a building level and then at a HVAC unit level what was happening with the consumption. And with actually the help of Siemens technology, we're able to create this robust energy and carbon reporting system that's cloud-based, and it goes through a centralized team in India where they can then see across the entire portfolio and have dashboards that flag something that might be wrong, let's say all the way in Wendell, North Carolina. And then they call my team and say, we think you have an outlier here. You might want to go check it. But being able to have this high transparency and actual usage data, we're now able to really put specific action plans in place by location, sometimes by equipment unit, to help us reduce energy use and carbon emissions. So we're early into this journey, but I would also say relative to peer sets, we're far along the road as well. And our next step is to leverage the data from IoT sensors, building management systems, and also an in-house cloud platform to further optimize our buildings. So technology is paramount, I think, in being able to build this decarb roadmap.
And you touched on that cloud word. So a lot of cloud-based tools being developed, but still currently a lot of the building stock has on-prem building automation systems for those that do have it. What are you seeing as the difference, advantages, disadvantages, and how is Siemens approaching on-premise versus cloud?
Sure, thanks. So I would say the main difference lies in infrastructure and accessibility. So when I think about on-premises building automation systems, they're installed and operated locally within that building. And the hardware and the software are maintained on site. The data processing and the storage occurs within the building's infrastructure. And it usually requires dedicated IT staff for maintenance and system updates. It's also pretty limited in terms of accessibility outside of the physical premise. So most of the times when I go tour sites that have on-premise building automation systems, it's in a locked, secured room where only a few people have a badge and are able to get in there. However, I would say that also comes with some security risks and some limitations. If you look at a cloud-based tool, like we're using for our portfolio manager through Building X, it's a building management system that utilizes remote servers accessed via the internet. So the software and the data storage are hosted offsite by a third party. For us, it's actually a group within SRE, but it's through a different provider. It tends to offer scalability and flexibility. So the updates and the maintenance is handled by the provider. But it also allows, and this is very cool, remote access and control from anywhere that you have an internet connection. So for a lot of my facility management teams, they don't have to be at the location to understand and access the data to then determine what needs to happen. So they are having faster analytics and faster than and improved decision-making capabilities as a result of having it in the cloud. But I would say, regardless of which one you're going to go with, security is a consideration, both physical security if it's on premise, but then cybersecurity for both of them. How do we make sure that it's following the protocols that your organization has in place? But I would say, if you're asking me where I think the trend is headed, more and more we're seeing a movement toward cloud-based tools. They just offer more remote flexibility, scalability, and accessibility, and potentially efficiency with this centralized management concept.
And maybe continuing along that line a bit of trends that you're seeing, are AI is the big buzzword right now. And so I would be remiss if I didn't bring it up. So are you seeing AI tools beginning to play a role in optimizing building operations and processing that data? If so, how? Be curious to see what you're seeing in the market.
Yes, yeah, we are starting to see AI tools becoming increasingly more prevalent, especially in the areas of energy optimization, where AI algorithms can analyze data from a building management system, let's say, for example, your HVAC unit or your lighting or your appliances, to really then optimize energy use. And what's cool about this is these tools can identify patterns, predict demand, and then adjust the settings in real time to minimize energy consumption while also maintaining comfort levels for the occupiers of that space. The other area that I think is awesome, especially if you come from the facility management world, we're seeing AI tools for predictive maintenance systems where you can monitor equipment performance and detect potential issues before they lead to breakdowns and ultimately equipment failures. And why I say this is cool for people in the facility space: when you're putting together that 5-year capital plan, you are hoping, wishing, crossing your fingers that, let's say, for example, your rooftop unit isn't going to go out this year. You can get another year out of it, another 2 years out of it. Well, all of a sudden it breaks and now you haven't budgeted and now everyone's upset because it's a cost you didn't anticipate. This type of AI tool for predictive maintenance will hope to minimize that being the situation going forward. So I'm really excited to see that one and how it plays out in kind of our capital planning and our maintenance budgets. And the last one that I'll say is about occupant comfort tools, where we can start personalizing settings on individual preferences, occupancy patterns, and environmental conditions. And for me personally, this is a Stephanie Dorsey perspective, but I believe that this category is going to become increasingly in demand by tenants and occupiers of space, because what we're finding now, for us, the number one competitor to bringing people back into the office space is actually their home. And so when you think about it, when they were working from home during the pandemic, they were able to have spaces perfectly customized to how they like to work, what noise level they like, the lighting, the temperature. So if we want to continue to attract people back into offices, we need to figure out how to provide these customizable solutions despite being in kind of an open shared office space, right? So I think this is going to be an interesting balance of how to do that. But my perspective is this is going to be increasingly more important as we bring people back.
So now if we bring this all back to Siemens and the challenge that you have ahead of you and that you are living every day right now, can you talk about some specific examples of how Siemens has been able to reduce the carbon emissions of its own buildings. We're kind of moving from potential future technologies, applications. What's going on today, and what have you already been able to achieve?
Sure. No, I'm happy to share a few examples. So, if I start with maybe what I would call the low-hanging fruit, and maybe this is some advice or perspective for someone starting out on this journey, I'd look at energy efficiency upgrades. So, we've partnered with our facility management provider, CBRE, as well as our Siemens Smart Infrastructure teams to do things like implement LED retrofit projects and start incorporating smart occupancy sensors and ensuring that we have energy efficient air conditioning systems, right? That's kind of a quick way to start doing it. And relative to some of the alternatives, it's kind of a more affordable way to start approaching this journey. I would also say we're starting to incorporate smart building technologies by using Siemens' own building automation and control systems like Decigo, which helps us optimize energy use and building performance. And we're also putting renewable energy through the portfolio. In fact, we've installed 2.5 megawatts of solar rooftop systems across our footprint. And for us, approximately 60% of electricity consumed is sourced from renewable energy. So I guess I would say for us at Siemens, sustainability is not something we just tack on, right? We don't just say we're going to do the real estate portfolio strategy and then we'll figure out sustainability initiatives to incorporate. Like we are thinking, designing, constructing, and operating our real estate portfolio with sustainability at the core of it. And so I think if you're going to start down this journey, it really has to be an intentional focus that's embedded into the way that you do your business and not something that gets tacked on after.
Totally agree. And I think that really comes back to brings it full circle to some of the things that we talked about in the first episode, which was that really that need to have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly have a 1 year, 2 year plan, but figure out what does it take to get to net zero or whatever your goal is. And you hit it on the head, the intentionality of that plan, and your actions that follow that. So as you're thinking about that plan, and not only what you've been able to do, but as you look down the roadmap, what are those cornerstone technologies that you think really accelerate the journey to either a carbon neutral or net zero building?
Sure. Yeah. So I'd go back to start with energy efficiency solutions, right? So technologies that are advanced type of insulation, high performance windows, LED lighting, energy efficient appliances. I mean, a lot of the work that we're actually doing right now within our own portfolio of our older buildings is actually a lot of conversion of gas HVAC units to electric, or on the production side, it's gas paint lines to electric paint lines, right? So that's kind of a no-brainer, I would say. The next, if you have the space to do it, would be some kind of renewable energy generation. So solar panels, wind turbines, anything that's really helping generate clean electricity on site and reducing the reliance on fossil fuels, but also lowering your carbon emissions. So as I indicated, we're continuing to look at appropriate locations, whether it's on carports in our parking lots or on rooftops of our buildings, for where we can add solar. The next thing that we're really focused on, especially because we're Siemens and this is core to our business, is energy storage systems. So looking at battery storage and different energy storage technologies where we can store excess renewable energy for later use, right? Allowing our buildings to maintain power during periods of low renewable generation or peak demand. And maybe the last one that I'll kind of touch on, and there's several more, the more sophisticated, right, and kind of robust you want to go into this, but building automation and controls. So I mentioned that we're incorporating smart building management systems. We're continuing to focus on that, right, where we can have automated and controlling HVAC, lighting, and other building systems. Again, most likely in the cloud, so that we can get efficiency on the way that we run our facility management program, is another area that I would recommend.
So you talked about a lot of really innovative technology that requires that capital planning process. What does the future hold for building owners that want to deploy that technology? They need to remain competitive and they need to responsibly invest in low carbon emissions. How do they balance it all?
Yeah, I think this is such a great question, and it's a little bit of a conundrum, right? Because uh, you have to invest, but are you going to get the premium out of it? And what I would say to different landlords, maybe or developers that are listening, is this isn't going away, right? This is here to stay. And in fact, if you were to ask Siemens, will they lease a location where the landlord won't comply and commit to our same carbon neutrality goals? Our answer is no. We actually will relocate if we can't get a landlord to cooperate in supporting our sustainability commitments. So it's either you can do it because market demand is going to warrant it, right? Which Siemens is, I think, on a leading edge of that. But I think there's going to be many companies that are fast followers as they've committed to similar goals. But the other side of that is, and I think but right now too, I'll add, I think you can actually drive a rent premium as a result of having a green building. So, during the pandemic, people said it was a flight to quality. I don't think that's right. I think it was a flight to green, which also then came with quality amenities, right? Because they tend to be newer stock for the most part. But I don't know how long that premium is going to last, because the next part is it's almost the carrot and the stick. The next part is our regulatory landscape is changing every day. And so governments worldwide are starting to implement stricter building codes, energy efficiency standards, carbon reduction targets. And so building owners who aren't proactively investing in this are going to then have to reactively invest. And it's going to tend to be faster than maybe what you wanted it to be, and also more expensive. And it's never good, right, in cities like New York, who are pretty adamant about this, to all of a sudden walk up to a building that you're potentially marketing and wanting to bring in new tenants, and you have a big red F from the city saying that you haven't complied with the standards, right? So I think it's now going to become table stakes that landlords have to comply. Now, I think there's a period of time that will go over. I don't think it's a switch of a flip, right, or flip of a switch, right, to do that. But I think it's coming, right. And then the other part though is it shouldn't be scary. Like, yes, it's something that's coming towards us, and it's a market preference that's going to be now a requirement. But if done well, you're making investments in things that are actually going to prove to have a return on that investment, right? So whether it's reducing your operating costs, reducing your energy consumption, all of these things should have a payback period that allows you to say, this makes sense for me to do. And right now, I can also charge a premium to be able to do this in most markets. So I guess my point to building owners would be, in order to remain competitive, this is the space you have to enter into.
Yeah, I think you also brought up a really good point around that flexibility and personalization and some of these other
Yeah,
value adds that are coming along with, in addition, of course, to the cost savings from more efficient buildings, but some of these other things that are going to bring people back into buildings and
that's right.
improve comfort.
Yeah.
Um, well, Stephanie, thank you so much for your insight, for delving into the details of Siemens Real Estate, the roadmap, as well as just what you're seeing in the market and some of those insights around why it's better to act now intentionally with a plan, get started.
Yeah.
Clearly it takes a unique combination of strategies, and you're hitting every single point on all the levers that we've talked about. You're hitting all of them. So not an easy job.
Well, thanks so much. It takes a village. So the whole team is invested in this, and the business and our leadership. So really appreciate all the support that we've gotten.
Thank you so much. So, to listen to our next podcast leading up to Climate Week, we're going to be catching up with industrial manufacturer Coherent on their sustainability journey with a guest host, Erica Call, who has been working with them as they get started in this journey and move to the next step. You can subscribe to the Siemens Decoding Decarbonization series on your favorite podcast platform. We look forward to seeing you soon, and thanks so much.